few weeks ago, I got a video in my YouTube recommended about a bunch of the buses in Aberdeen circa July of 2017, and whilst I'm not exactly the biggest fan of watching bus spotting content, I decided to give it a wee watch since I'm very unfamiliar with Aberdeen's buses pre, 2019. There was definitely a lot of what you would expect from Stagecoach and First Bus in any given area they operate in the UK around that point in time. An assortment of Enviros, some 𝓕𝓻𝓮𝓪𝓴���, some streetlights, some pretty snazzy looking interdects, the whole 9 yards basically. And then we got into a lot of the weirder stuff, Enviro 500s, 𝓕𝓻𝓮𝓪𝓴��� A330s, and so on and so forth. Wait, no, this is Aberdeen, not Edinburgh, so it'd be so on and so D, wouldn't it? I know, yes, aren't I incredibly funny? So how is it that Aberdeen used to have such an intriguing bus network, even just less than 10 years ago, whereas now its buses kind of just blend in with a lot of other UK cities? One of the most noteworthy things about Aberdeen's buses was the sheer amount of bendy buses that were running through the city for a good 3 decades. However, I don't really have any good footage of any of the bendy buses, and my bus home is in like 10 minutes. So I'm afraid that I'm just going to have to quickly do this bit over voiceover. So, yeah.
Our story starts back in 1992 when Grampian Regional Transport introduced K1GRT, an Alexander-bodied Mercedes-Benz 0405G, and the only one ever produced for the entire UK as a matter of fact. Travel West Midlands might have had 11 0405GNs, however at the same time those are low-floor buses unlike K1GRT with its stepped entry. Step aside, disabled people, I want to be different. K1GRT was withdrawn from passenger service in 2009 and is now held at the Grampian Transport Museum in Alford, which is a little under an hour's drive out of Aberdeen city centre. Fast forward to 1999.
First Aberdeen are wanting to roll out some more bendy buses across the city after K1GRT has managed to prove that actually bendy buses can work in Aberdeen. Quite well even, and thus they turned to Wrightbus.
Now at this point, First Bus were already quite familiar with Wright's offerings. In 1997 alone, they introduced 112 renown-bodied Volvo B10 BLEs in several regions of England, such as Manchester, Bristol and West Yorkshire. And that's to say nothing of the eye-watering 242 axis flow lines that First introduced between 1998 and 2001, so it's not like they were just taking blind throws at a dartboard here.
And so, come the year 2000... Okay, let's stop that now. It's a very nice song, but at the same time, I don't really want to get copyright struck, because ideally I would be able to make some money off this video eventually. The only way I'm going to be able to do that is if you guys subscribe, so please do, I guess. And the first 𝓕𝓻 fusions for Aberdeen, registered as W2FAL to W7FAL, entered service, being only the second lot to do so, behind only the ones First Bus purchased for use in Bradford. These wouldn't be the only 𝓕𝓻 fusions bought for use in Aberdeen though, as a little down the line in 2005, First would order a further 20 more for use on services 1 and 2. The 2000 𝓕𝓻 fusions would be withdrawn from service in 2016 due to the fact they are not DDA compliant, and sadly, as far as I'm aware, none of these ever got preserved. The other 20 fusions would remain in service until, funnily enough, 2020, and would be replaced by both 9 Mercedes-Benz Citaro 0530Gs, which have been cascaded up from First York, and actually tell you what, I'll tell you about the other 10 later. These 9 Citaros, oh, to hell with this, you know what I mean. Colloquially referred to as Bendy 6 and then Bendy 8 through Bendy 15. God knows why Bendy 7 didn't come up, yet Bendy 6 did. Were originally used on York Park and Ride services before being transferred from First York to First Aberdeen to in part replace the 𝓕𝓻 fusions. These stayed with First Aberdeen until early 2025 when they were all sold off to other operators, with the exception of Bendy 13, which was actually bought into preservation, though currently it is, I think, on loan to City Transport for use on Sunderland Connect services 700 and 701. It's complicated. Bendy 15 has been parked in the exact same spot since I first visited Aberdeen back in November of last year, and it supposedly hasn't moved from this exact same spot since it was withdrawn back in March of last year, so to be honest, I don't really know what's happening with it. I've heard some people say that it's being preserved, and I've heard a couple people say that it's being scrapped, so I think I'm just going to take the stance of a fly on the wall here and just kind of watch to see what happens. I mean, me personally, I think it'd be really cool if another Bendy Mercedes bus got preserved at the Grampian Transport Museum alongside K1GRT. GRT, but again, that's just my opinion. Now, as the Bendy buses were probably the most interesting thing about Aberdeen's bus network until this time last year, that doesn't mean they weren't the only experimental buses shooting up and down the city. In 2015, the 25 first Glasgow 𝓕𝓻𝓮𝓪𝓴𝔂 Enviro 500s, which were used on service 75, were transferred up to Aberdeen for use on, surprise surprise, services 1 and 2. These stayed with First Aberdeen until 2024 when they were sold off to other operators. Cambridge Buses bought most of the E500s, with 16 of 25 going south for use on their services. Aberdeen's bus network is also a little bit ahead of the curve on the environmental front as well. In 2012, Stagecoach purchased 22 𝓕𝓻𝓮𝓪𝓴𝔂 Enviro 350 hybrids, 13 for their Aberdeen depot for use on service 59 between 𝓕𝓻𝓮𝓪𝓴𝔂 and Northfield, and a further 9 for their Perth Environment depot for use on Stagecoach Gold service 7, which ran between Perth and Scone. Why the hell is the place pronounced differently to the two pronunciations people already argue over in regards to the food? Jesus Christ. In fact, you know what? No. The scone debate. I'm going to start calling the food Scone now as well. In spring of 2019, the Perth Enviro 350 hybrids ended up moving to here at 𝓕𝓻𝓮, and all 22 E350s stayed here until their withdrawal in 2022. So what if hybrid electric isn't really your bag? Well, what about hydrogen? In 2012, then First Minister Alex Salmond announced the Aberdeen Hydrogen Bus Project, with the hydrogen buses being refueled at the Kitty Brewster Hydrogen Refuel Station, which is located right next to the Aberdeen City Council offices. The first batch of hydrogen buses arrived with Aberdeen City Council in 2014, consisting of 10 Van Hool A330s, 5 for Stagecoach and 5 for First Bus. I'm going to be honest, I think these are possibly the most North American looking buses I think I've ever seen on a UK street, and oh wow, would you look at other places A3 series buses operate. Hartford, Connecticut, Salt Lake City in Utah, York Region in Ontario, San Francisco in California, etc, etc. How surprising. These buses lasted 6 years before being put out of service in 2020, with one of the Stagecoach ones, 29906, being held at the Grampian Transport Museum in Alfred, like 𝓕𝓻𝓮𝓪𝓴𝔂, as I was talking about earlier. In the end, Stagecoach never got any hydrogen replacements for the A330s. However, with First Bus, the A330s, and also the Eclipse Fusions, as I was talking about earlier, were superseded by 15 new Wright Street Deck hydroliners, which were the very first hydrogen fuel cell double-decker buses in the entire world, actually. A further 10 hydroliners were then thrown into the foray in 2022, bringing the total of hydrogen buses at King Street Depot to 25. And you know, it is obviously really good having these innovative and environmentally friendly double-decker buses running through the streets of Aberdeen. It's just that they are. Not a single one of the buses has been in passenger service since September of 2024, a full 18 months ago as of this video releasing, because there's been issues with the refuel station at Kitty Brewster alongside the one at Cove, which is on the other side of Aberdeen. And Aberdeen City Council, a little over a week ago as of filming this, announced that the Aberdeen Hydrogen Bus Project would officially be coming to an end, which leaves the future of these buses really uncertain. The hydroliners aren't actually owned by First Aberdeen, they're actually owned by Aberdeen City Council, so if it's up to anyone what happens to them, it's kind of up to them. There is a chance that the buses get scrapped, which is absolutely hysterical considering that some of them aren't even 5 years old yet. The Wrightbus now offer a service called New Power, where they're repowering a bunch of their midlife diesel buses, such as Gemini 3s or Street Decks, from diesel operations to battery electric operations. First Bus have already really utilized this service with a lot of their Street Decks. Hell, quite a few repowered Street Decks have ended up here at King Street Depot. But I suppose the question is, how much more challenging would it be to repower a hydrogen fuel cell bus into a battery electric bus? It is just a matter of whether or not A, Aberdeen City Council are wanting to do it or not, and B, whether or not Wrightbus are wanting to do it or not. But in the meantime, until Aberdeen City Council decide what they want to do with the buses, I think they're just going to be sat idly at King Street Depot for a long time. Watch them actually reach a conclusion with the buses once this video has actually come out. If that happens, I'm going to be so pissed. So what buses did First and Stagecoach bring in to replace the likes of the Citaros, the E350s, and the E500s? The stupid street. That's what replaced them. Okay, that's a bit harsh. I mean, I would argue that these are probably the best street decks I've been on, and they're definitely the best electric buses in Aberdeen, that's for sure. And the first E12s are actually pretty decent. For pre-2024 𝓕𝓻𝓮𝓪𝓴𝔂 standards anyway. You've kind of always got to lower the bar a bit with them at that point. I mean, Stagecoach's electric offerings in Aberdeen are, how do I put this? Oh yeah, but at the same time, the E400 EVs still work pretty well, I guess. And the piss poor 𝓕𝓻𝓮 E10s that are used on the 59, those were originally bought for Inverness anyway, so who cares? So yeah, to answer the question proposed in the title, I would say yes. Aberdeen's buses have nowhere near as much character as they did just this time, like 5 years ago even, let alone 10 or whatever. And whilst Aberdeen, for a city of its size, still has a pretty good bus network, all of what made it unique way back yonder is now gone, and a lot of the buses kind of just blend in with a ton of other buses across the UK. But yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe. But in the meantime, I'm going to get going now. So yeah, take care of yourselves.